Once again, good afternoon all. I welcome you all to the webinar on growth mindset, the key to organizational change. It's really good to have you all. We've already done the audio and visual check. I hope everyone can hear me. All right. So as we move forward, I would like to run a few checklist items to help us get the best from this webinar. I request all the participants to remain on mute at all times. Ask the questions as soon as you have one. Please put your comments and questions on chat only, and we will take it up from there. Very quickly introducing you about Strengthscape. We are an organizational transformation and development company headquartered in Bangalore, India. We help organizations create mechanisms for development, motivation, commitment, creativity that enable employees to give their best every day. To bring the best onto your table, we have partnered with Wiley for everything this set of products. Central Test for psychometric assessment, Skillsort for the off-the-shelf e-learning content. Our offerings, as you can see, include HR certifications, competency mapping, technical training, psychometric assessments, behavioral training, OD consulting, and many more. For this webinar, we have Ian Kishinder from the firm, who's a senior consultant, and through his lens, we will understand how growth mindset can be leveraged to any organization's benefit. And that is me, Aishani. I work as business analyst consulting at Strengthscape. Now, I would request Ian to take the webinar forward.
Thank you very much, Shani, for that lovely introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webinar, right? The growth mindset, and that's the key to organizational change. Very interesting times that we are talking about change. It's over 30 years ago, Carol Dweck, who is a psychologist and professor, she became really interested in how students have their attitudes about failure or being able to manage this change. They noticed that some of the students rebounded when they came across challenging situations, while other students seemed to be devastated by even the smallest setbacks. And after studies, studying the behavior of thousands of individuals, Dweck and her team coined the terms the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. So that's the very first stages of where we came to know growth as a mindset. So and that helped to describe the underlying beliefs of people, what they have in terms of learning and intelligence. How do you look at those two areas? When individuals believe that they get smarter, they understand that there's an effort that comes along with it that makes them stronger. Therefore, they put in the extra time and effort, and that leads to a higher achievement. So today we're talking about the mindset and how important that is for us. So where the mind is, the man will follow, that many of you would have come across in the past when you communicated with people. I always believe that the mind is the battlefield, and from a neuroscience perspective, the mind and the body are considered one. Today, we are in unprecedented times of change, where the environment around us has changed. The people around us have changed, the workplace has changed, and how you perform your job role, that is something that has changed. And so what we get around this is feedback. And from this feedback, what we do with it is what will determine the outcome for us. So taking that cue from Carol Dweck, what we want to do is to understand a little more about the growth mindset. So here's what I invite you to do. open up the chat section on today's webinar. Your opinion, what is a growth mindset? What do you believe is a growth mindset? I'm looking for some of your responses on the chat. In your opinion, what is a growth mindset? Thank you so much, Rajiv. Yes, perseverance, open to change, never say die attitude. And it's so important in today's world. We want to look at looking for opportunities to advance, being positive, to get better, right? A growth mindset is about continuous learning and practice. So all of these points that you put on so lovely on the chat tells us that there is something we've got to do about it. If we are seeing certain results, so which means if we keep doing the things that we do, we are going to get the same results that we get. And if we want better results, we want different outcomes, positive outcomes, then we've got to change the way we do things. And that's something that we want to keep in mind. So one of the most basic beliefs we carry about ourselves is that it has to do with how we view and inhabit what we consider to be our personality. So if we talk about the mindset, different kinds of mindsets that each of us have, we have our own personalities. Yes, things come from the environment, the culture, and so on. But there are areas in which we can train ourselves to get the right kind of outcomes. So let's talk really about differentiating between the two mindsets that we want to talk about today. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Abhijit. We're talking about continually trying new things. So differentiating between the two mindsets. On one hand, we have a fixed mindset. That assumes that our character, intelligence, and creative ability are static givens, which we can't change and in any meaningful way. And the success is that the affirmation of that inherent intelligence. So we believe that we are that way, and that's what we're up to. And that's what we constantly measure ourselves against as well. So we have that fixed standard. We're striving for success. At the same time, we are avoiding failure at all costs because we have a sense of being smart or skilled.
Hi, Ian. I would like to cut you in here. Sorry for that, but I think people are facing some audio issue, as in your voice is appearing to be choppy.
Let's just check. Maybe we can you please tell me if you can hear me well enough? How many of you are feeling that it's choppy? Let me just move.
Now it's better.
Okay. Let me just try a little bit of move with my location. Okay, I think it seems to be better now.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay, all right. So we're talking about a fixed mindset, and what happens with the fixed mindset is that we restrain ourselves. We are restricting ourselves in some way. However, on the other hand, we have a growth mindset. So here what we're doing is embracing disruption and change to improve ourselves and the organization. We're looking at a setback as an opportunity to develop, an opportunity to learn. We have a never die saying attitude. We have a constant thirst to learn and grow. Our effort and attitude determine our success. So in other words, we could choose to have a cause and effect mindset. We to say everything that's happening to me around is because of something, or what I have as my potential is predetermined, and that's what I can give back to the organization, that's what I can give back to myself, and that's what I can be successful with. Or on the other hand, I could use that feedback to continuously try new things and continuously grow. So these are the two main mindsets that we can use to navigate life with: growth or a fixed. The choice is yours. Have a growth mindset. That's essential for success, right? So here, what we're looking at, the right mindset for improving our intelligence. All of us have the basic requirements of our intelligence, whether it's conscious or subconscious in terms of how we work. We can enhance that to being more effective in our environment. So let's talk a little more about this and how we should inculcate this into our work, and how we can affect the organization as well. So the question really is, why should companies or organizations invest in a growth mindset? Any thoughts about that? Maybe you want to put something on chat. What are some real needs of why an organization should invest? Change is evident. I'm still seeing some messages on chat saying that the voice is not clear. Eshani, could you please confirm?
It just becomes choppy at times. Ian, is it possible for you to log in and log out once?
Do that? Yeah. Apologies about that, everyone. Just give me a few moments, please. My internet seems to be fine, but I'm not sure why it seems choppy. Give me a moment, please.
If you can just give it a minute for him to log in back. Meanwhile, if you can state your answers in chat as to why companies should invest in growth mindset culture.
Okay, I'm back. Could you please confirm on the chat if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Ian, you have to share your screen. So
yes, give me one moment. All right. Okay, so we're talking about why should companies invest in a growth mindset. Could you please share with me your thoughts on the webinar chat? Okay, to create a culture of learning with, right? To create a culture with learning with a positive attitude. True. Rewarding. It helps people. It engages people. It helps them do what they do in a better way. Yeah. Thank you so much for your responses. Keep them coming. Okay. So why is that important for us? The reason is there are researches, and there are facts that tell us that 47% employees look at a trust factor with the company. They want to do more. They feel when there's an opportunity to grow, they have a tendency to stay longer in the organization. So if you're looking at those results, a positive performance, you're looking at lower turnovers of employees, you're looking at people trusting and want to stay. And that's important for us to have an important growth mindset. 34% of them increased sense of ownership and commitment to what they do. So as I said, if you're looking at good performance, if you're looking at increasing performance, increasing the culture and the capacity of people, we're looking at an opportunity to create that growth mindset. And thirdly, 65% commitment that supports risk-taking. I think in all of the projects and all of the work that we do on a daily basis, it's important that employees feel supported for what they do. And that culture of a growth mindset in an organization creates that for the team, creates that. And that's not just from the frontline people or the people who are engaging with clients, engaging with customers. It's from the leadership teams, it's from the people up there. And that line of sight, once it's drawn to what people do and why they do it, you will see a better result with the growth mindset. And that will become a value and a culture of operation on a daily basis. So if we are going to water something in terms of growth, the mindset is the soil that we need to water, right? And add in the other buckets of the right kind of fertilizers, the right kind of pruning and so on for employees to be able to grow and learn in the organization. So there are, of course, different kinds of misconceptions as well when it comes to growth and the mindset. So what are some of those misconceptions? Let's spend a few moments talking about what are the misconceptions. So when we talk about misconceptions, we believe many times that we already have it. Yes, we hire people for skill. We hire them basically. There are very different views in terms of hiring people. I've always believed that when you hire a person, you've got to hire them for their attitude, for their mindsets, and what they bring along. And the skill can be trained, it can be transferred. But what is in them, such as talents, such as behaviors, and the mindset, is something that we want to keep a close eye on. People often confuse a growth mindset with being flexible or open-minded, or with having a positive outlook. That may not be the reason. Qualities they believe they simply always had. Everyone is actually a mix of the fixed and the growth mindsets that I was talking about a couple of slides ago. And that mixture continuously evolves with the experience. A pure growth mindset doesn't really exist. So we've got to use whatever we have in the environment, whatever we have from that person, build that with the growth, with the right kind of mindset, which we have to acknowledge in order to attain the best benefits that we seek to start with. Another misconception is that it's about praising and rewarding effort. And while that is really true, it doesn't stop there. What needs to be done next is that it's not true for employees in an organization all the time that just praising and rewarding them is good enough. In any settings, what we are looking at is the outcome. Goals, more than goals, the outcome of the goals. Unproductive effort is never a good thing. It's critical to reward not just what results we get, but also the effort that is put in. It could be a learning process to emphasize the process that yields the right kind of results, right? So for example, seeking help from others, being collaborative, trying new strategies, capitalizing on setbacks and moving forward. All of these things can be rewarded, can be recognized. So the outcome is the bottom line that flows from deeply engaging in these procedures. And thirdly, another misconception is we espouse a growth mindset. If we have that, good things will happen. Yes, that's very noble thinking. But, you know, when we have visions, when we have mission statements, when we can probably argue with the values that each organization has, like growth, empowerment, trust, innovation, respect and trust, and meaningful, innovations or products and service lines. But what do they mean to employees if the company doesn't implement those policies and make them real to them and attainable? Right? Then in that case, what happens is everybody's talking about that, but the fact is we don't inculcate that into the daily routine of how employees work and function. Right? So it's important and a useful lesson for us. So even if a project does not meet its original goals, hopefully it doesn't fail, but it does not meet all of the goals that it desires an objective to meet, then we also still should be committed to recognizing smaller factors. Every member, not just words but deeds. It could be that it's something that they have done, the effort that has been put in to reach whatever outcome they've got. So in that sense, it's not just about having and talking about a growth mindset. It's about putting that into practice. It's about doing it, like many of you rightly said, it's about living that on a regular basis. It's about doing it every day. And what you practice is what you will become. Right? I'm just looking at the chat for a few comments there. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, it will be available to you. We'll tell you about those further logistics in a short while. So with those as misconceptions, what we need to think about is how can we draw out of that mindset, a fixed mindset, and start using a growth mindset. We want to weed out the fixed mindset in triggers. So as you can see, our attitude, our mindset is built on our attitudes, and that influences our behaviors, which are our actions, and then gives us the outcomes or the results, and that motivates us into further performance. So even if we get these misconceptions, we correct them. It's still not probably easy to attain a growth mindset. One of the reasons really is because we all have our own fixed mindset triggers. And that sometimes consciously comes into play. When we face challenges, we receive criticism or fare poorly compared to somebody else. We start judging ourselves, we start thinking negatively. We can easily fall into the insecurity or defensiveness. And a response to that stops our growth. It inhibits it. It terminates it in many cases. So our work environments too can be full of these mixed mindset triggers, right? So a company that plays the talent game, just as a phrase, makes it hard for people to practice growth as a mindset. Their thinking, their behavior, such as sharing information, collaborating, helping them innovate, and seeking feedback, which allows growth, right? And so these result in huge errors. So as I said earlier, we are a mix of both a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And at some points in time, you can have these cropping up, but we constantly train ourselves, train our minds to remain in the growth zone. For that, we must identify and work with these triggers. Many managers, many executives have seen the benefit of working with a learning mindset or a growth mindset. Recognizing and how to fix those triggers fixes themselves, and then it helps fix people around them as well, right? So if that shows up in our personas, it's time that we look and see how to treat them effectively so that we don't feel threatened or defensive. So it's important that we look at talking back to these mindsets. It's important that we look at persuading it and collaborating with these triggers to help pursue our own challenging goals. Yeah, and so that's really important. So how does a fixed or a growth mindset affect our success? I've been talking about why it's important, and we agree about its importance, but how does it affect us in our success? So Remember that the view that you adopt for yourself profoundly affects the way you lead your life. It can determine whether you become the person you want to be and whether you accomplish the things you value most. So how really does that happen? How can a simple belief have the power to transform your physiology and as a result your life? Well, I've said this in the past. Every aspect of our life tells a story. So the things that we are in, the situations that we are in, are the result of certain decisions that we've made in the past. And one of the main decisions is our mindset. So whether we have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, that is going to affect the results that you get. So talking about the fixed mindset, it really is the intelligent. It talks about intelligence as static. It's fixed, it's there in you. Whereas the growth mindset is intelligence can be developed, which means your skills and your capabilities can be developed. You can achieve something more. So let's look at a few areas that commonly can be affected with our mindset, and that can also affect the results that we get. When we come across challenges, right? Now we can believe that we are carved in stone or we are adaptable. Obstacles that we come across, the effort when we put in, the criticism and the success of others. So all of these, we can choose, we have a choice. And we can choose whether we want to work with a fixed mindset or we want to work with a growth mindset. So believing that your qualities are carved in stone is the fixed mindset. It creates an urgency to prove yourself over and over again. If you have only a certain amount of intelligence, a certain personality, and a certain moral character, well, in that case, what's going to happen is that you've got to prove that you have a healthy dose of them constantly, because it's like running on an uncharged battery, or which means the battery that you have within you is constantly being used from within, right? And that simply wouldn't look good or feel good in a long-term basis. So you might feel deficit in these areas at some point in time. You know, I've seen so many people with this one consuming goal of proving themselves. I've seen them in the classroom, I've seen them in their careers and in their relationships. Every situation calls for a confirmation of their intelligence. They have to stand above in terms of their personality or character. And every situation is evaluated. Will I succeed or fail? Will I look smart or will I look dumb? Will I be accepted or rejected? Will I feel like a winner or a loser? Right? So that's one. And on the other hand, you have the growth mindset in which these traits are simply a hand you are dealt with or something that you've been given a dose of and you've got to work with it. Always trying to convince yourself to others. Well, we don't have to work under that pressure. We can look at the growth mindset. It's based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts. Although people may differ in many ways, in their initial talents, their aptitudes, interests, and their temperaments as well. Everyone can change and grow through application and experience. So it all depends on the kind of mindset that you want to hold. So at heart, what makes the growth mindset so winsome is that it creates a passion for learning rather than a hunger for approval from somebody. Its hallmark is the that human qualities like intelligence and creativity and even relational capabilities like love and friendship can be cultivated through effort and deliberate practice. So people who have this growth mindset are not discouraged by failure, but they look at that as a stepping stone to success. So how do people with a fixed mindset react to challenges? While on one hand, people are avoiding challenges, right? The other hand, the growth mindset is embracing challenges. You could be somebody who gives up really easily when you put under pressure, or when you come up against certain obstacles in life or in the workplace. Or you could be somebody who persists and says, I will never give up. I will achieve what I want to achieve. In terms of the effort, if you have a person with a fixed mindset, they look at effort as being fruitfulness, not fruitfulness, but fruitfulness, less of fruit, and it's worthless. It's a waste of time, in other words. But a person with a growth mindset constantly looks at the effort, the amount of time, the amount of diligence you put into it. It's a path to mastery, a path to getting better, a path to excellence. You can look at criticism, where I take feedback from somebody and just throw it away and say, it's not, I have what I have. This is who I am. This is what I'm going to be doing. And that's a fixed mindset. And believe me, many of you would agree with me that growth is very far from that area if you ignore constructive feedback. But on the other hand, I can take that feedback as an opportunity to learn from the criticism, learn from the feedback. Press me down like a spring, and I will bounce back once you leave me. You could also feel threatened by the success of others. And people who are in the fixed mindset often feel threatened. They feel that, well, where's my competition? By the success of others. Or I could look at a way of finding lessons in that inspiration to excel and to get better. So I can use others as a data point in my professionalism, in my skill and capacity to be able to get better. Now this, again, I'm going to reiterate that it's your choice. And what happens is when we choose to have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, that will probably encourage you or give you the ability to achieve less than what your potential is. On the other hand, you have a growth mindset, you will reach ever high levels of achievement, because the person that you're really beating or competing against is yourself. You don't need external endorsements to be able to learn and grow. And if you think back at people who have achieved, they have achieved ever high levels of achievement because they had a growth mindset. So that confirms, if it's a fixed mindset, it's going to confirm your view of the world as compared to it giving you a greater sense of free will in the world. So again, it's your choice which one we want. And I would emphasize that a lot of executives, a lot of leaders, a lot of people that have succeeded because of the fact that they've chosen to have a growth mindset. Intelligence can be developed. Fixed or growth, what you say. This is how you would recognize somebody who's in this zone, whether they are in the fixed zone or the growth zone. So a person who's in the fixed zone might say, I'm either good at it or not. Well, that's great. You're either good at it. It's good. You have a sense of self-awareness. But on the other hand, it can be that I can learn anything I want to learn. There's a free will in this. There's a permission. You've just given yourself permission to learn, a permission to grow better. I don't like to be challenged, right? I've come across some individuals who have the mindset. Nothing necessarily wrong with them, but it's just the mindset that would probably create an obstacle to succeed, to create an obstacle to grow. On the other hand, I could say, I want to challenge myself. I'm competing against myself. When I'm frustrated, I give up. Right? And it's not held down to only professionals. It's held down to celebrities. Every individual, every human being does get frustrated. But do you give up? I like the punchline that ESPN had some time ago. They said, "We don't crack under pressure." The question is, do we crack under pressure or do we not? What we can do is, when I'm frustrated, I will persevere. I will keep going. When I fail, it means I'm no good. But I can say, when I fail, I learn. So a few more interesting sayings that people come up with. You'll hear that in the conversation. You'll hear that in the choice of words. If you succeed, if you succeed, then I feel threatened. It's talking about somebody else's success. If you succeed, I feel inspired. I always say this, when I hear people being successful, especially people who have been part of my workshops and my training programs, when they tell me that I have succeeded, I've become a manager, I've become somebody who directs a team, I feel happy that they learned something different. Tell me I'm smart. Instead of that, tell me I tried hard. You're recognizing the effort, not just the intelligence. It goes beyond the intelligence. Right? My success is down to my abilities. Well, it's good to know our abilities and trust our abilities, but it should not stop there. My success is down to my attitude and my effort. That will increase my abilities. Yeah. And of course, I don't believe in effort. Well, that's a reiteration of the first point. In fact, you either got it or not. I believe in effort. Practice makes perfect. Preparation and practice in the area of your mindset is going to be the key to bringing you into that growth zone. And that's important for you. And that's the key. That's the choice that you've got to make. So with that, there's a lot that happens in our minds, in our brains about making that choice of a growth mindset. Thank you so much for putting those points up on the chat, Smita. Absolutely. Thank you. So when we talk about neuroscience and how it affects, when people believe they can get smarter, they understand that effort makes them stronger. So which means they're going to put that extra time and effort, and that leads to higher achievement. Our recent researches and advancement in neuroscience has shown that the brain is far more malleable than what we ever knew. There have been multiple researches on brain plasticity. It has shown how connectivity between neurons can change with experience. We tie it to certain memories, to certain events that have occurred. With practice, our neural networks can get stronger, and they can create interesting new paths, strengthen the existing paths, and build an insulation for our neural growth by the actions that we take. That could mean good strategies, asking questions, practicing and following good nutrition, and of course, sleep is very important for our brain to regenerate and for our body to get better as well. It's often said that neurons that fire together, wire together. We connect it. Right? And the currency for our emotions, our memory, our emotions, we pin that to events that have occurred. So if you're using that in the form of telling somebody a story, you will realize that they remember that much better. Right? So essence in what happens in our brain when we talk about a growth mindset. We are really telling our brain to start thinking positively, telling our brain to think in the best positive way. Here's a biological study that was carried out in terms of how our brain really functions. In this biological study, research studied rats, and they found that that what the rats did day to day affected the connections in their brains. So to do or not to do, they were put into, these rats were put into empty cages with nothing to do besides eat and sleep. Right? While other rats were put in a more stimulating environment with challenges, in the cage with challenges, with puzzles or small activities to perform as compared to the other rats. And also they had rats there to interact. At the end of the experiment, they examined the brains of each group of rats, and the rats who were put into the challenging environment with the mazes and the challenges, they had a much denser and more interconnected brain as compared to the others. In fact, their brains also weighed a little more. And most importantly, to the research, they were smarter as compared to the rats without anything to do. Right? So which means they were better at solving problems and learning new things as well. And now that's just rats. What about us in our workplace environment, which is more complex, more demanding on us? So let's take a look at a business case in the recent past. I was privileged at some point in time in the past, in my recent past, in fact, to be a part of Hewlett Packard as an organization. And in 2015, the tech giant was going through a tremendous change with more than 50,000 employees migrating to the new firm. That's when HP split into two organizations, HP Enterprise Solutions and HP Incorporation. Right? So leadership was faced with a crucial question: what kind of culture would these people create? So a company-wide survey was produced some interesting results, which showed them a priority to keep the spirit of collaboration and dedication and innovation while looking at performing, keeping people able to perform in their regular tasks. So they implemented a program that started with leadership principles and then drove a growth mindset through the organization. And the thinking partnership included learning sessions for a few hours to understand the growth mindset and how they could apply it at work. This also gave people tools to put the growth mindset at use on a regular basis. They were able to develop formal leadership principles and enable employees to do even more than what the normal culture of the organization had to offer. And by the end of that, a testing of over 300 principles, a company through the company-wide, eventually it landed on imagine the future, inspire the team, and make it happen. Those terms reflect the mission, which used the growth mindset to be collaborative, execute, and without burdening people's brains with overwhelming a flow of list of values as such. And it just doesn't stop there with Hewlett Packard. Here's another example. Interestingly, I was also reading this today about the Microsoft CEO. So the growth mindset has come to represent a goal for him as a lifelong education. Satya Nadella's leadership has been transformed because of the choice of using a growth mindset. Microsoft is emphasizing learning and creativity. And their CEO believes this is how leaders are made, and that idea is reflected in several programs. So, in fact, Microsoft has partnered with the Neuro Leadership Institute to strengthen the interest in the growth mindset. And creating those frameworks, they've adopted a number of strategies to make the growth mindset efforts stick to people and the organization. So some of the events that happen there would be the hackathons. So they have the annual hackathons where people step outside their day-to-day jobs and develop leadership skills like collaborating across disciplines and advocating for ideas. So an employee's idea that comes in, which affects business or improves business or social merit, which is called a hack, and that's shared between teams, and the teams are then funded, departments are then funded to create a prototype or a service that can help those projects. Atlassian is an Australian organization that also looks at ideas from a growth mindset. HP has an idea generation program that runs on an annual basis, which helps people build ideas, and all of that stemming from a growth mindset. So you could be fixed. One of the key areas when you talk about change mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset really is to understand the power of yet. So what is the power of yet? We can choose to live in the negative, the effect of what's happening, or we can look at the cause and change that. The power of yet has amplified and supported the love of lifelong learning that we hope to instill in people. So it's a simple reminder to preserve through these rough spots that we come across and understand the difference, understand somebody who probably gives up on a problem and one who routinely strives to excel with more effort. Right? So the power of using the strategy of the power of yet is to obtain deeper understanding of the material and useful habits and increase our own confidence. So how do we use the power of yet? Tell me, in your opinion and your thoughts, how do these words sound to you? Maybe you can put your responses on the chat. I can't do this. It doesn't work. I don't know this. It doesn't make sense. Well, I've heard that a lot. I don't get it. I'm not good at this. Thank you. Okay, not my favorite kind, absolutely. Any other thoughts? Yeah, it sounds very negative. Yeah, very close-minded. True. Thank you. So we've heard this. All of us have heard a lot about a lot of these statements, and coming from probably people who are with a fixed mindset and giving up, on their way to giving up. Right? Well, I can say yes. I can't do this. But I can add a very small word, a very powerful word, and that's the power of the word yet. I can't do this, yet I will try. This doesn't work, yet I'm sure I can find a way to fix it. You see how that changes the way you think about the sentence itself when you use the word yet. I don't know this, yet I must learn. It gives you a reason for what you want to do. It doesn't make sense yet. I can try to understand it. I don't get it yet. I'm sure I will at a short time in the future. I'm not good at this yet. I can develop my skills. I can give myself permission to do it. And that really is the power of the simple word yet. True. Otherwise, they're just excuses, right? So giving us permission. We are all on a learning journey, and that's because we haven't accomplished a task yet. That does not mean that you cannot or should not try, and certainly that you should not give up. Your yet is coming. Your yet is not yet here. It's a type of hope that is instilled in us not to give up. So if you think about it, it's the power of hope, the power of believing. And what you believe in, that's going to result in your mindset, your attitudes, your actions, and ultimately the results that you get. So the power of growth mindset says that I believe in you, I give it a try, encourage each other, encourage yourself, and that's the power of yet. So we're probably looking at some tips to be able to develop a growth mindset and to move away from the fixed mindset. So what can we do? The first thing is that we can acknowledge and embrace imperfections where we're not perfect, right? Hiding from our weakness means you'll never overcome them. So pick a weakness, look at, many of us are aware of our talents, our strong areas and what we do. Pick a weakness, areas that we may not be good at, and improve a neutral state. And then probably we can find somebody, a partner, a mentor to support us to complement that and get better at it, right? And to improve that, change that, move that to a strength even better, especially if your job role requires it. We can look at viewing challenges as opportunities. Having a growth mindset means relishing these opportunities for self-improvement. Learn more about how we fail. What can we do about it? Take that as feedback. Attack a small challenge until we succeed. Learn how to code or cook in that circumstances. We could look at emphasizing growth over speed. Learning fast isn't the same thing as learning well. You know, when I was in many years ago, when I was in my teens, I used to practice martial arts. That was probably a craze at that time for me. The master who was teaching me, he said, I used to, you know, as a young person, I wanted to do it as fast as possible. You know, he said, slow down. It's not about speed. It's not about doing it fast. It's about doing it correct. The speed will automatically follow. And learning well sometimes requires allowing us to slow down, make those mistakes, and move from the conscious competence mode to an unconscious competence. Reward ourselves for actions. Organizations should be doing this as well. Reward actions, not traits. Right? Tell employees, if you manage people, tell employees or colleagues when they're doing something smart, not just being smart. They're doing, we talk about working smart. We talk about doing things smart. It all starts with our mindset as well. Yeah. So utilizing the feedback that we get, any criticism, of course, criticism, I mean here, we talk about constructive feedback as a positive. Take that as a precious jewel. You don't have to use that, you know, the term constructive criticism or criticism, but you have to believe in the concept of being positive that leads to learning. Cultivate grit. People with that extra bit of determination, we call that oomph, and effort, will be more likely to seek approval from themselves rather than others. Some of us are really cautious about this fact that we tend not to take risks. Take risks in front of others. Stop trying to save face all the time. Well, of course, calculated risks, you know what I mean. And just let yourself admit that you're imperfect. We could make mistakes. It will make it easier for you to transform into the growth mindset. Take risks. You never know, you probably surprise yourself. Own your attitude, right? Whatever's happening is not the cause, and it's not the effect of what's happening around you. Take ownership of it. Once you develop a growth mindset, own it. Acknowledge yourself as someone who possesses a growth mentality, and be proud to let it guide you throughout your professional career. right? And so to summarize what we've been talking about for the past hour, a growth mindset drives motivation and achievement. So you have that belief that's deep rooted in you that I can get smarter. When you believe that, you start telling your brain, telling yourself that you can do much better, which means learning becomes your goal. An effort to learn something, to develop, and to accept criticism in terms of positive feedback, it makes you much stronger. And by that, it's going to help you spend more time in terms of working harder to develop your skills, develop yourself, and train your mindset. And finally, that's going to give you the outcome that you've always been looking for. Right? So with that said, we have a few more minutes on today's webinar, and I'm going to open it for any questions that you may have or any comments that you may want to share with me. You will have the access to the recording of this webinar. Some of you were asking earlier. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Aishani. Okay, so any questions, anything that you want to share, please put it on the chat. All right, so if you don't have any questions, I'm going to hand this over to Aishani to share with you a little more information. Aishani, over to you.
Thank you, Ian, for that great understanding of growth mindset. Hope it's been enriching for all the participants. Moving ahead to the next slide, I have a few announcements to make. So we are starting our competency mapping batches this weekend. Apart from that, in the month of July, we have instructional design certificate, design thinking, and online certification that we conduct. You can contact us for further details. The details of which are mentioned in the next slide. Yes. So for any kind of support in terms of learning, or if you have more questions to ask us, you can drop in your queries. Thank you all so much for joining.